know, substances that makes us healthy. Substances make us feel better by suppressing symptoms. But the reason I'm going to say fasting, no matter what the question is because it's simply the best way to let the body heal, to get out of its way so it can do what only the body could ever do. Many years ago, in a different world, really, I mean, like a different planet than we're on today, right? You know, we've talked recently about the fact that all wildlife, some people are projecting, will be extinct in 40 years. Imagine. But I don't know about you, but every day I wake up and I hear these birds and I feel joy. Imagine if there was nothing. Right? How many of you read Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring? Okay, or maybe The Mad Cowboy. Howard Lyman was a 7th generation cattle rancher in Montana, and the first person in his family to go to school, go to university. And he came back and said, "Dad, we're going to modernize the farm. Chemical agriculture." This is back in the 50s. Right? The advent of chemical agriculture. Does anyone know how chemical agriculture started? Where did pesticides come from?
The war? World War?
Yeah, at the end of World War II, there were companies like Dow Chemicals and others who were sitting on stockpiles of chemicals that they manufactured to kill people, and they had this stuff left. Don't you hate it when a war ends too soon? You got all this extra stuff. That sucks, right? So they're sitting on all these chemicals they invented and manufactured to kill people, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And someone said, "Hey, why don't we dilute it a little bit and spray it on the food?" Why does that work? Why does it kill insects? It was designed to kill people. Why does it kill insects?
Because it's toxic to...
Because there's one central nervous system design. Every species shares the same central nervous system design. Anything that will kill humans, I mean, you don't need nearly as much to kill little insects. I actually did the research once, a simple Google search, and I don't remember now, but if I remember correctly, it's something like we're 100,000 times bigger than the average insect, something like that, you know, mass and size. So doesn't it stand to reason we probably need a lot less poison to kill the insects, right? So that's why chemical agriculture came about in the early 50s. World War II had ended. There were all these chemicals left over. Okay, I mean, think about this. We're taking chemicals intended to kill people and spraying it on our food. Now, in the U.S., you know, some years ago, they thought, oh, you know what? Some of these things, they're really way too toxic. Like, no American should be eating this stuff. So you boys, you keep on manufacturing it, and you ship it off to countries where the people are other colors. Not for the white people here, okay? How screwed up is that? Right, how completely unethical is that? So this is where, there was probably a question in there at some point. I forgot what it was, but.
Fasting.
Fasting.
How long should you fast?
Right. So I'm not even sure how we got on this, but Plutarch said years ago, in a different world where we didn't have all the chemicals and we weren't being affected by Wi-Fi and microwave and all this other stuff, Plutarch said, instead of medicine, fast for a day. And there might have been a day where that worked. But the average person today, their body is way more toxic and probably way more dehydrated and way more out of balance. And so one day of fasting may not accomplish what you needed to, okay? But absolutely, you know, if you wake up in 3 months and your head is full of mucus, or you've got a fever, or whatever's going on, what I would do is call in sick if you have a place to work, okay, stay in bed and sip water. And if it has to be a second day or a third day, fine. In most cases, relatively minor ailments like this will be resolved in this amount of time. Now, let's be clear about what's happening. What is a cold? What is a flu? What's happening? What is your body doing when you have a cold?
It's changing your physiology to get rid of any kind of bacteria, so it's creating symptoms.
Can I shorten that for you?
Yeah.
Cleansing.
Yeah.
It's cleansing. Your body's detoxifying. That's what colds are. Symptoms are evidence the body's cleansing and healing. So when we think about it from that context, come back to the this earlier question. Well, how about for this? How about for SIBO? How about for whatever, right? What most people want to do is get rid of the symptom, right? In fact, most people, I think, would say that health is when you don't have any symptoms. Is that true? Is health the lack of symptoms? No. Remember, symptoms are evidence your body's cleansing and healing. If your body needs to cleanse and heal, symptoms are positive. This is an intelligent response by a virtually infinitely intelligent body. It knows exactly what it needs to do. But we wake up in the morning with a head full of mucus, and what do? What does the average person do? Blow their nose.
Take cold-free tablets.
Yeah, they walk over to their medicine cabinet, they take out a bottle of something they already own, and they swallow something, and in, I don't know, 60 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, their sinuses are cleared, and they think, perfect. This stuff healed me. Did it? Did they need to be healed?
Stop you from cleansing.
Their body was cleansing. It was doing exactly what it needed to do. They took something toxic. Is everyone here clear that all drugs are toxic? Every one of them. This is why there's a long list of side effects. I mean, there are some people that seem to think, this stuff is fine. No, it's not. Ibuprofen, which is, that's no big deal, right? They're now saying, if you're over 50, don't take the stuff. It can kill you. There's no single medicinal substance that's not toxic to you. All medicinal substances are toxic substances which your body is reacting to in a way that creates symptomatic relief. In other words, in a way that prevents your body from detoxing as it needed to. And so now, you've taken the stuff and you feel better. Are you better? No, your body wasn't able to do what it needed to do. And now you've added some other toxic substance into the mix. You're more toxic than you were before. And I'm embarrassed to tell you this because now it seems so obvious to me. Like I should have figured this out a long time ago. I started studying nutrition when I was 14. I'll come back to that, why that happened another time. But I've been involved with this inquiry now, what creates health, for almost over 44 years. It just occurred to me maybe 10 years ago, maybe less, that every time we suppress symptoms by using drugs, herbs, whatever, we are developing chronic disease. This is how we develop chronic disease. This is how we create cancer and heart disease. This is how we do it. Imagine if every single time your body wanted to cleanse or heal itself, first of all, what would you experience? What's that look like? Symptoms. You might not feel so good. If every time that happened, if instead of reaching for some toxic substance to suppress the symptoms, you said, my body's doing something important, I'm going to rest and sip water and let it do what it needs to do, our bodies would stay clean. There'd be no symptoms. There'd be no chronic disease. We would never develop chronic disease because every time there was something the body needed to get rid of, we'd get rid of it, right? Cancer, as I've already said, you weren't all here. We talked about this on Friday before Elizabeth left us. Cancer, a woman who's dealing with cancer, if you're just getting here, cancer is what happens when toxicity meets poor immune function, when those two things come together. Well, if every time your body wants to detoxify, you prevent that from happening, you're ensuring your body becomes increasingly toxic. And one of the side effects of increasing toxicity, understand toxicity and immune function, poor immune function, aren't the same thing, but they're related. The more toxic you are, the harder your immune system is going to harder time it's going to have. Okay, the weaker it's going to get. So we actually create most of the diseases that we die from. This is what happens. It occurs to me, I've got a story to share with you guys that illustrates this. I don't know if you've noticed, I like stories. You know, I believe, my experience is that people relate more to information when it's personal, when they can understand it in the context of what happens to someone. And that's why I use them. Years ago, this was probably 20 years ago or so, maybe a little less, doesn't matter. I got off a plane in Santa Monica, California, okay? I was going to California to do a lecture tour. Now, if you're not familiar with California, Santa Monica is, if you go due west from LA towards the ocean, you're gonna come to Santa Monica. You go a little further north, you've got Malibu, south you've got some other towns, right? LA is not on the ocean. It's not far, but you know, you see all the LA TV shows and people at the beach, that's not LA. They're in Santa Monica or Malibu or somewhere else, okay, other towns close by. And the woman who'd organized for me in Southern California that year was a client of mine. She was 27 or 28, I think, and she was 6'1" or 6'2", and gorgeous. Just like 10,000 other women in Los Angeles, who all go to LA from all over the country and maybe all over the world looking for work as models or actresses. There's a ton of beautiful people there struggling to make a living, right? She was trying to make a living as a waitress, and this is an expensive place to be. So it wasn't easy. And she'd met a guy who was doing reasonably well. Right? Does anyone know Santa Monica? Nobody?
I've heard of it.
Heard of it? Yeah? What would you guess, Marcos? You know, a nice apartment overlooking the ocean on the beach in Santa Monica's worth. Any idea?
Somewhere close to $1 million.
Yeah, I would guess it's at least $1 million and possibly even two these days, but back then it was probably $1 million. So, I didn't tell you. I mean, I got out off the plane, got into her car. I said, "How's everything looking?" She's like, "Everything looks really good," but she was upset because there's this one guy that wasn't going to come. She wanted him to come, and he wasn't planning on coming to any of our events. We had 6 or 7 events scheduled in the area, and he wasn't planning on coming. I said, "Who's this guy? Why is this important?" "Well, this is the guy." So she'd met this guy, and he lived in an apartment on the beach in Santa Monica, like probably hundreds or 1,000 other people. No big deal. Lots of people have $1 million. $1 million isn't that much anymore, right? This guy owned 9 or 10 other apartments, oceanfront apartments in that building, where he kept his stuff. Okay? He had $9 or $10 million worth of oceanfront closet space. No one lived in these units. He just kept stuff in them. Okay? He was 47 years old, had a controlling interest in a long list of companies, had a house in the Caribbean, a house in London, a house on Central Park, a house in Paris, yachts and helicopters, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was a billionaire, and he'd met this beautiful young aspiring model who was struggling. And he said, "Look, you know what? I'll clear a little bit of space in one of these units so you can put a mattress on the floor." And she literally had a mattress on the floor and counter space to have some fruit and use of a bathroom. And that was it. Okay, she was living there rent-free. I don't know what else their arrangement involved, but she wasn't paying any rent. And so she was really upset because he wasn't interested in coming to anything. And she told me that every day they took a walk down the beach together. I said, "Look, call him and ask him if it's okay if I join you." Now, he knew who I was because she'd been trying to convince him to come. He'd seen flyers, etc. "Ask him if it's okay if I join you for your walk." And she called him. He said, "Sure." So the next morning, we meet him on the beach. my first billionaire, and she hangs back. We walk down. We spend probably an hour and a half together, walking down the beach and back. And one of the first things he says to me, on the flyer that we'd prepared, it said what was true at the time. It said, Loren hasn't been sick a day in 13 or 14 years, whatever it was. It's now been 30 plus, but at the time, it was 13 years, okay? And he says to me, you know, I'm never sick either, right? No symptoms. And I said, well, that might be a good thing. And he said, what do you mean, how can it might be a good thing? How's it not a good thing? And I explained that symptoms, getting sick, is your body cleansing or healing. And it's a positive thing if the body doesn't need to cleanse or heal, but sometimes the body needs to, but doesn't have enough energy to do so. There's not enough energy to create a symptom. Now, how many parents do we have here? You have a child?
Sorry. I thought you said.
You know what a parent is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it does happen. Here, most people at your age are already grandparents, but, okay. So, if you have a child or had little babies, you remember when they projectile vomited? Okay? It doesn't just come out. It like shoots across the room. That's a lot of force. When's the last time you did that as an adult? Okay? Doesn't happen too often. You remember how their temperature went from being normal to being really high like that? That doesn't happen to adults. Why not? Does it not happen to us because we're much healthier? No. It doesn't happen to us because our health and vitality declines for most people from the moment we're born until the day we die. It's on a downward slope for most people. You want to be clear, right, that it takes energy to create a symptom. So I explained this to him. He said, oh, smart guy, right? I mean, he's made himself a lot of money. He's a pretty intelligent guy. He gets this. And we talked about a lot of things that morning. When we left us, he said to me, he said, you know, Loren, he said, everything you've said makes sense. And he said, it's going to take me about 6 months, but I'm going to clear my schedule. And I'm going to come spend a month with you because I believe you. Okay? I believe you. Unfortunately, it never happened. He never came. I never saw him. Because 3 or 4 months later, he was in Paris, and he dropped dead at the age of 47. He was never sick. They have no idea what the cause of death was. He just died. Okay? I know what the cause of death was. He died of old age. His body was no longer capable of producing enough energy to stay alive. In fact, as we parted, he walked back into the building, we walked towards the car, and she said to me, what do you think? And I said, I think he's in serious trouble. And she said, why do you say that? I said, well, I'm a Reiki master, so I work with energy. I can feel people's energy. I stood next to him, walked alongside of him for 90 minutes. I said, he's got less energy than this parking meter. Okay? He's not in good shape. There's a reason he doesn't get sick. At one point he said to me, he said, you know, I don't eat any fruits or vegetables. I said, what do you mean? You don't eat any? He's like, I don't eat any. How do you not eat any fruits? And he said, well, I said, why not? He said, whenever I eat fruits and vegetables, I feel sick. Why do you think that's happening? Why do you think that happened?
Because it's cleansing to his body and it.
Well, is anything cleansing to the body? Let's just be as accurate as possible with language. You're on to it, but it's not cleansing. It allows the body to cleanse.
Yeah.
The body's cleansing because it's not burdened with the normal heavy crap. Right? I explained this to him. So later that day, if you haven't been to Santa Monica, it sounds like most of you haven't been there. Amazing farmers markets. Farmers market. They closed down about 6 or 8 blocks of downtown Santa Monica to car traffic. And all the farmers, California is where like 60% of the food in the U.S. is grown. All the farmers get in their trucks early in the morning and drive to Santa Monica, set up to be there at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. The farmer's market's amazing. In fact, I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But the farmer's market's twice a week, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Mondays and Thursdays. It was the next day. So later that day, she had a message on her voicemail from him, and it said, hey, if you're going to the market tomorrow, would you pick up some of that fruit and shit for me? Those are his exact words. If you could pick up some of that fruit and shit for me, I'd convinced him to try eating better, right? It was too late, okay? It was too late. He waited too long, okay? Understand, I mean, this came up for me because we're talking about symptoms. He had no symptoms. He was never sick. Did that mean he was healthy? No. It can mean someone's healthy, or it can mean someone's so unhealthy they can't manifest anything. There's no energy to create any type of elimination, because remember, symptoms are the body cleansing. If there's no energy to cleanse at all, there'll be no symptoms. This happens to a lot of people. There are movie stars, beautiful people, right? Maybe they're fit because they've got trainers, okay? And you know, they won the genetic jackpot, right? The genetic lottery. They're beautiful people. And so they look great and people think they're healthy, and then one day they drop dead. This happens, okay? People are surprised. You can't necessarily, if you know what to look like, if you know what to look for, if you know what to look for, you might be able to tell what health looks like, but most people don't know how to do that. They don't know what to look for. It's not a big physique, right? Is everyone clear about this? Fitness and health are two different things. They're not the same thing. People point to athletes. Oh, look how healthy that person is. That's not health. That's fitness. If you spend 3 or 4 hours in the gym every day for years, you can accomplish the exact same thing, no matter what you eat. Years ago, I had a client who was a nationally ranked tennis player in the UK. Okay, by the time he came to me, he'd retired at 39. But he'd been nationally ranked, playing since he was a teenager. Okay, in the top 20. Anybody want to guess what his favorite cuisine was? McDonald's. Okay, and he came to me because his brother, his father, his uncle, his grandfather had all died of heart attacks. And at 39, he'd started to feel some heart pain, some chest pain, some pain in his artery, feeding his head. And said, maybe I ought to try fasting. He actually contacted me from Bali while he was on the 19th or 20th day of the fast he was doing on his own. All wrong, lots of mistakes, created issues. But he contacted me for some help. And one of the things he said, so when do you think I should break my fast? I'm getting on a plane in 5 days. I said, 2 days ago would have been good. Okay, break it immediately. Okay, you're not going to have enough time to refeed properly. Okay, you should break your fast. And a year later, he came to me and fasted for 6 weeks. Amazing thing, amazing process. And he completely changed his level of health and vitality. Okay, he was fit. He still played tennis, right? He wasn't playing competitively for money anymore, but he played tennis all the time, worked out all the time. He had a great body, but he wasn't healthy. And this isn't so unusual. I don't know if you're aware of it, but I mean, if you pay attention to the news, you'll hear stories of professional, college, and even high school athletes having heart attacks while playing their game, playing their sport. I forget, remind me if you can. Do healthy people have heart attacks? They don't, okay? Some of you are too young to know about this, perhaps, but in 1972, I believe it was, I think it was 11 members, maybe more, of the Israeli Olympic team were assassinated in Germany. Okay? Not by Germans, by Arabs, Palestinians, if I remember correctly. And they autopsied all these members of the Olympic team, these were Olympic athletes, the top of their game, right? Very, very fit people. Every one of them had plaque in their arteries. Okay, that's the beginning of heart disease. But they're athletes. Yeah, they're fit. That doesn't mean they're healthy. You want to be really clear about this. Okay? I'll bet you know people that you compete with who eat crap. Lots of them, right? A lot of people actually think if I work out enough hours a day, I can eat whatever I want. Yes, you can. And it will kill you. Eventually, it will kill you. Okay? We're all subject to the same laws of nature. Okay? These physical bodies are subjected to the laws of nature.